everybody. Welcome to another No Jitter Fast Chat. I'm Eric Kraft. I'm the General Manager for Enterprise Connect and the publisher of No Jitter. And I'm very pleased to be joined on this Fast Chat by Michael Koidal, who's head of Converged Communications for the Americas at Tata Communications. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to talk today.
All right. Well, we really appreciate the chance to talk to you and have got a lot of interesting things to cover. I want to start out just to maybe introduce yourself a little bit more to our viewers and tell us a little bit more just about yourself. What's your background? How long have you been at Tata and what's your role there?
Sure. First, I'll give you a little bit of background. It's kind of fun. I think, people find it humorous. My degree's in physics, but a long time ago, I decided I like people and how we communicate way more than doing, the hard math. I'm a generalist. I've been in the communication space many years, and I'll give you some insight on that. But I'm more focused on from a customer or line of business perspective and less about the technology. So I enjoy the enablement that we can get with technology, but I try to look at it from a customer's perspective. I started out in the communication space at Verizon Business, where I led an enterprise team in the Pac Northwest. And really, to date myself, that was back in the day when Nortel and Avaya were some of the offerings that we had. Part of the big challenge was getting people to adopt Cisco as a VoIP provider, SIP trunking, and there was a lot of customer concern about quality and reliability. There was discussions about red phones. And that was also my first contact with what I consider the first UC app, WebEx. From there, I moved on and became more interested in the cloud space, started working for companies like ShoreTel and RingCentral, and how do we help them get to the cloud and leverage some of those flexibility, unification, and so forth. Again, some of the similar, fear, uncertainty, doubt by customers making that transition on quality, but also getting away from things like MPLS and all that infrastructure is very hard for customers to get around, but help them kind of make that journey. And then as we started migrating, the next fascinating technology that I got excited about was how customer experience moved to more of what I would call the API-based space. How do you tie communications away from just a phone ringing and how do you tie it to an application? The things we've enjoyed with, the text from Domino's or the call from your Uber driver and how those implement. And then COVID hit. And that was a great time to be in that space, how we help customers and augment. But one of the interesting things that I came across at Twilio and in the space in general is all of a sudden, regulations and GDPR and compliance and all these other things became more and more barriers on how to do this. And that's when I kind of looked at the potential at Tata and the opportunity to also take all that experience and combine it into one role with the Converged Services team and help drive that. And that's how I ended up here, which is a lot of fun.
Definitely. We both go back into those early days, and you're right. To see the changes has been amazing. You mentioned Pacific Northwest. I think where are you still based out there? And tell us a little about your team.
Still based in Seattle. Although I run the region, this has always been my focal point, which also is home to two of the three big clouds, which is also kind of an exciting space to be. At Tata, my team is really focused around that end-to-end communications piece. So, I have nine people, 9 specialists. We cover everything from the SIP trunks, the traditional global SIP trunks, where, Tata is literally the voice leader globally with 1,600 carriers that we work with. But then on top of that, it's built on our infrastructure. So that team really, if you want voice enablement, migration, consolidation, that's what that team does. I have another team that focuses on UC offerings, and that's where we really focus on Microsoft, Cisco, and in some cases, like bring your own carrier for Zoom. And again, we leverage that infrastructure layer, and on top of it, we build compliance, regulatory, help you get into markets that are difficult, and then we also help from an overall perspective. How do we simplify that deployment and management of that platform on the UC side? And then, from there, I have a CCaaS team. We are paired up with some of the top OEMs. We're a Genesys Platinum partner, Amazon Connect SP partner, Cisco partner. And then we also have our own offering so that we can tie together all the customer experience and customer contact side of voice as well, right? And then lastly, to tie together, I guess, or fill any gaps, we have our own CPaaS platform, Tata Communications Digo, that gives you that same kind of API enablement and those same kind of toolkit to kind of, again, as you change your voice or way you communicate to your either workplace or customers, we can help fill that gap.
Got it. So tell me, I mean, I think you've given us a great overview of sort of Tata and the market and all the things you bring. Relative to the market, what are kind of how does those translate into your sort of key differentiators, and what's the sort of basic pitch for Tata Communications?
I think at first, and this is it's kind of not part of the pitch, but it's important to people. We're part of the Tata Group, which is a very large organization, and it gives us a lot of capabilities as such, and it gives us neat, facilities. Not only do we build these tools and enable customers, but most of it's tied back to our own infrastructure, our own resources. And in this market, you see a lot of fragmentation where you'll buy a piece here and a piece here. But to simplify and to deliver that extremely well, that is a key piece on top of that. We have POPs in all continents. We've been built around over time as we add services. And so that's, really it's global communications platform built, for the globe on our own infrastructure. And then the other key thing is, again, that new last mile challenge of regulation compliance. We actually have a dedicated regulation team, right, in countries that help people make that leap and as they pull it together. And then we kind of built our own practice around how do we help them make that digital transformation and accelerate those cost savings and benefits at the very end of the day. And then, I like to highlight another key differentiator from some of our peers is, when you look at, that kind of large organization, you would expect a slow moving, not necessarily the best support. So that support piece is really, really important to us. So it's not just, can we help you transform, but we can do it and to a point where we're able to maintain it at a very, very high level.
That's a great testimony to the support that you're providing, that you get that kind of a response from your customers. So I want to turn now specifically, we've got coming up in just a few weeks, the Enterprise Connect event. We're very appreciative at Enterprise Connect to have Tata on the floor as one of our exhibitors and sponsors. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about your presence at Enterprise Connect. What is it that you're going to be showcasing at Enterprise Connect, and who are you going to have on hand sort of to talk to the attendees?
Yeah. So our whole booth and our whole presence is structured around kind of showcasing our capabilities and helping share our best practices on how we support global enterprises, because that is kind of who we're designed to serve. You'll see at the booth, we're really divided into two categories, although they overlap. One is, again, focused on that connected workplace, whether that be, combining disparate systems, making migrations, how we support Microsoft and their drive for success, or Cisco and some of the other partners. And then on the connected to customers piece, that's where we'll be showcasing a lot of our best practices from a contact center perspective, how we would fill gaps and needs there, way we can augment, transform, and then, of course, also the CPaaS capabilities. But again, in a more of a holistic, centered around a line of business challenge instead of around a product specific piece.
And so obviously your experts will be on hand, and folks can definitely take advantage of the opportunity to meet with the Tata team at your booth and in other places where they may want to get some more depth in what Tata's doing.
And I was going to add one other interesting thing. One of the trends, I was meeting with one of our clients recently, is also, traditionally we view those two pieces separate. They get blurred. One of the things that we're seeing that's a fun trend is they're taking all of their customer facing numbers that would normally go to a voice system or a PBX to date myself, right, or a platform, and they're moving all of it to contact center and using that as a routing engine for all customer engagement. So you'll see pieces where they'll bifurcate differently than they are set up today. And I think that's also the importance of showcasing that in the booth, is kind of how we can help you make that split. Because as you look at this might be a shock, but a lot of our clients still have that big, large structure, because when COVID hit, everybody just stopped and moved to Teams. They took their laptop home or they went to WebEx and they did Zoom and they just started using it. And so now they're revisiting that. And so really one of the key things in coming to the booth is let us see how we can help you quickly and rapidly adjust for that change.
Got it. Makes sense. And so just to wrap up, you kind of touched on, some trends and some kind of specific issues. If you step back and think about kind of in each of these areas, UC, contact center, CPaaS, what do you think about as kind of the big challenges and the sort of mega trends that the industry is facing that Tata will be able to talk to people to at Enterprise Connect?
I think the first one is how do you optimize, right? How do you get around the fact that voice minutes are declining, right? So everything you've built is about, how do I minimize, the cost of long distance or, those kind of things, but it really doesn't matter. It's like, how do I manage those numbers now? And how do I combine them with the right place, right? So that you can have the communication flow correctly. The second one is there's big pressures to drive those cost efficiency down. We've seen what the economy is doing. So now is the chance to accelerate that. We've got some interesting programs to help customers assess. We've had very, very large organizations say we need to cut 30%. And this will help us in many different ways. And so we've got some plans in place and methodologies that we help them assess, build a plan, and execute on it to get them additional more than that and help complete, like I mentioned before, the COVID piece, right? There's a lot of unfinished projects and they're kind of on hold, but we can help you realize those cost differences and justify getting them done, and it'll make their lives easier. People are short-staffed, limited budgets, the usual drivers, but right now I think that's a key one too. And then the one that's exciting to Tata is really kind of looking at the hyper-connected ecosystem and how do we help their core business either access new markets, change geographies. We're noticing like we have customers right now that are pulling out of Hong Kong and need to relocate to Japan and Singapore and other Asian markets. We have customers entering Africa and Mecca and some of the other regions. And how do we help them get to that? How do we help them in that hyper-connected ecosystem do things like connect to workforces in factories in Malaysia and combine that into a single platform? So those are kind of really, from our perspective, the interesting trends that we can tackle and help them through that piece.
Really a lot of, as you say, really interesting trends, really timely. I encourage everybody when you're at Enterprise Connect, definitely do stop by and visit with the folks at Tata, reach out to them in advance through the event app or other contacts and schedule an appointment. It's a really interesting time to be in the business that Tata's in, and I think they've got a lot of great things to say. So, Michael, thank you very much for your time. We've been speaking with Michael Koidow, who's head of Converged Communications for the Americas at Tata Communications. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Eric. Have a great day.
You too.